Trump administration is no stranger to getting into fights, right? Well, its recent opponents may be a little surprising to you.
The publisher of the books, Franklin the Turtle, and pop star Sabrina Carpenter have called out the White House and administration officials who have used their content in online posts. For insight into this issue and how intellectual property law plays a role here, we're joined by Madhavi Sunder. She's a professor of intellectual property law at Georgetown University. Madhavi, thank you so much for joining us. So I guess the first question I have is, can the Trump administration actually use this content? What does the law say?
Okay, well, there are a lot of laws that are implicated in the Trump administration's using this content. So I think Franklin the Turtle has probably a litany of claims. He could say, first, they just did him dirty. They did his character dirty. I mean, there are potentially AI deepfake issues involved with the creation of this fake book cover. Franklin targets narco terrorists, and I'd like to talk about the AI issue separately, but just good old plain old fashioned copyright and trademark issues, as well as right of publicity. So the character of Franklin the Turtle likely is copyrightable in itself, and so unauthorized use of the character is a problem. Then there's trademark issues because I think the owners of the rights here could argue that this is creating endorsement confusion. They don't want people to think, unless they really did authorize this use, that they endorse this kind of use. The other really complicated thing is that Franklin is a children's character. And so there's also an argument that this is dilution by tarnishment, that this tarnishes his good reputation, his wholesome reputation. He here being Franklin, by associating him with military, bloody wars, and not to mention Secretary Hegseth's own political troubles at this point. So I think that there's a number of arguments. Finally, there's even a right of publicity. If you can believe it, characters themselves, you don't have to be a real live human being to have a right of publicity under the law. So we've had cases involving the famous characters from Cheers, for example, Sam, Diane, Norm, Cliff. They had a winning complaint against the use of robots sitting at a bar. And those robots, which somehow were likened to Sam and Diane, were considered to violate their right of publicity. So I think Franklin's got a potential right of publicity claim here, too.
All right, Franklin goes to court, perhaps. So let's move on to humans who are at the center of this. Sabrina Carpenter called out the White House for using her song Juno in a video montage depicting U.S. immigration and custom enforcement raids. As she said, this video is evil and disgusting. Do not ever involve me or my music to benefit your inhumane agenda. Does she have a case here? Because I know, I post on Instagram and sometimes I'll have an artist's song behind my post. It's, 15 to 20 seconds or so, and I don't ever get in trouble for it. What does the law say about using snippets of an artist's music in a message like this coming from the government?
Great question. So when you're using snippets on Instagram for your personal posts, on your videos, or your photos from your last vacation or something like that, that's perfectly fine. There's actually blanket licenses that artists offer for personal use. But the complicated part is when you start to use their music for commercial uses, or here even political uses, which I think would arguably fall under this category, where the rule here is get a license or cease and desist. So I think to call upon one of my favorite Sabrina Carpenter songs, it's not enough for the Trump administration to just say, please, please, please. This song, by the way, was on my top 5 Spotify Wrapped this week. But they can't just say that. They actually need to get a license. It's called a synchronization license or a sync license. And that's because artists make a lot of money nowadays from using 15 to 20 second snippets of their songs in videos. So this is a viable market. And we even have an important recent U.S. Supreme Court case which argues that artists or photographers or musicians, they have a right to get a license for artist references. So if you're using their work to create a new work, this could implicate a number of their copyrights, reproduction right, the right to create derivative works, the right to distribute and publicly perform. So they really need a license. And really, the Trump administration knows better than this because they already lost a pretty high-profile case against Eddie Grant. So he's one of the owners of the copyright of the famous 1980s song Electric Avenue. And the Trump administration during the campaign used a snippet of his song alongside a campaign video. And the court said this was in violation of Grant's copyright. And they rejected, this is important because they rejected fully Trump's fair use argument. There is a famous defense for using someone else's copyrighted work, and that's fair use. But typically, you only get a fair use argument if you're using the work to make fun of the work, to parody the original work, so to parody Sabrina Carpenter's song Juno. And that's not really what they were doing here. I think that most courts would agree with the court in the Eddie Grant case, which said that actually the use of the song was really just for entertainment purposes. By the way, I got to see Sabrina Carpenter live this summer in Barcelona at Primavera Sound, and I saw her. So basically, she has this bit that's quite famous with fans where she arrests for fun fans or celebrities in the audience. And so she does that with fuzzy pink handcuffs, but that's not at all the way the use of her song was offered in this video. And so she's objecting, and she has a right to.
Sabrina Carpenter is just the latest pop culture figure to take issue with how she's portrayed by the Trump administration or using their music. Bruce Springsteen, Olivia Rodrigo, Rihanna, Phil Collins, ABBA, Semisonic, Neil Young, Guns N' Roses, Celine Dion, Beyonce, Adele, the list goes on and on. How come we don't see many of these end up in court? We hear these artists speaking out, but they don't ultimately bring a case.
So some of it is because the law has been changing as the value of these sync licenses grows. BMI and other performing rights organizations have more and more allowed artists to opt out of blanket licenses, allowing everybody to be able to use for, objectively determined royalty rates to use their music. And more artists are being allowed to opt out, particularly when it comes to these uses that they disagree with politically. So part of it is that. And other times there are settlements that we don't hear about. But I think at this point, the number of high-profile cases that have gone, against Trump, and where we've actually had rulings against Trump here, I think make it difficult for him or his team to say, "Oops, I did it again," not to mix my pop cultural references here. And there are serious consequences potentially here, not just, significant statutory damages, which accrue for every single one of the infringing uses of the copyrighted material, but also at this point now willful infringement could be found where they are again and again making the same mistake and knowingly, most likely. So that can also lead to heightened damages in these cases.
All right, we'll have to leave it there and say bye to Madhavi Sunder, professor of intellectual property law at Georgetown University. We appreciate it, Professor. Have a great weekend.